Hello and welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live. My name is Daniel Caw and I'm tickled pink to be joined by
Careful
my
with
colleague.
that one. That caused you trouble the last time. That's where all the Greg Wallace stuff started.
Oh Christ, I know. Let's leave that in the distant past.
Yes, let's, for legal reasons.
Keith, there's only one thing to talk about,
Yeah.
and I think the phrase "it wasn't a classic" was invented for tonight's game.
Well, do you know, there's a few ways of looking at it. Was it a great game of football? No. Did it make your eyeballs bleed from time to time? Yes. Was the atmosphere poor? Is it a great result for Celtic on the road? Yes, it is. And I was trying to make this point last night. You know, I kind of got the feeling that people were getting ahead of themselves a little bit and thinking, and maybe in retrospect, you know, the way the game plays out, was there a chance for Celtic to take 3 points? Yeah, probably. Should they be delighted to come back back down the road with another point in the bag? Yes, they should. That's what it's all about. I said after the 0-0 draw in Bergamo against Atalanta, I felt it was a coming-of-age performance for this Celtic side. And I see more evidence of that tonight. Even though it wasn't a great Celtic performance, it was a streetwise Celtic performance. Mm-hmm. And do you know something? Celtic fans surely have been crying out for exactly that for years now, especially on the road in the Champions League. They've gone to the last 2 away games in the Champions League. They've got 2 clean sheets, a couple of points to add on to the tally, and they're now almost home and hosed for a place in the playoffs, which was the target right from the start. Mm-hmm. You know, it wasn't a great watch, I get that. But Celtic have tweaked their system, tweaked their strategy for these away games. They look so much more secure and robust and resilient because of it. And a 0-0 draw, I don't care who you are, a 0-0 draw away from home in the Champions League, you take it all day. You just take it.
Yeah.
So, no, as much as it wasn't a great watch, it is a great result. And that is the top and bottom of it. That's all that matters. Because how many times have you seen Celtic in the past go into games exactly like this and get caught in the counter and be too aggressive in what they're trying to do going forward, and they leave the back door open and teams break on them. And we've seen it over and over. Do you know something? I actually find it quite refreshing to see a Celtic side go away from home in Europe, be a bit stodgy, be difficult to get through, and get home out of town with a point in the bag. Might not get too many pats in the back for style, doesn't matter.
Well, look, any Celtic fans watching live, feel free to get in touch. And are you happy with that type of performance tonight? Anthony Murphy, writing in on Facebook, agrees with you, Keith. It's a very good point away from home. There's been a definite growth in this Celtic side over the last 12 months. Credit where it's due to Rodgers and his staff. Stephen Taylor, 4 matches unbeaten in the Champions League, not too shabby. Schmeichel once again proving he's a genuinely world-class keeper. That is a fair point, Keith, because for all there was, very little chances in the game, that save at the end from Schmeichel was absolutely crucial.
From Piazza's header?
Yep.
Yeah, it was a good save. I would expect him to make it all day long. Not enough if he didn't save that one, there would have been Stewart's inquiry. But it was a good save. He got up well. I'm not sure it's going in, actually. I think it might come back off the bar in any case. But yeah, he got across. He did the right thing. He got his fingers on it. He's put it over the crossbar. He's completely and utterly reliable. And as we discussed the other night, I actually genuinely believe he's an upgrade on Joe Hart. No offence to Joe Hart, who spoke very well in the commentary box tonight. But Schmeichel for me, better with the ball at his feet, obviously. And I think the equal of Joe Hart when it comes down to actually shot saving. That was a decent header. I think Piazza could probably have done a bit better with it. If I'm honest, he could have put it. If it was looping back towards Schmeichel's left-hand post, it might have had more of a problem. I think it was a fairly comfortable save, but a good one nonetheless. And just what you would expect from a guy who operates at that level. He is a top-notch goalkeeper who belongs in the Champions League.
I got a mountain of stick from friends because the other night I said, if you actually look at the quality of player, how good he is.
You didn't say that.
No, he's up there.
No. What you said was as significant or as important a signing as Henrik Larsson.
Do you know what? I would tweak
Come
that
on.
by saying,
Come on.
I would say,
Rein it in, Dan.
okay, I need to rein it in a bit. I do think the quality he's got, how good he is as a player, I mean, he's right up there.
He's not up there with Henrik Larsson.
No,
and that was a good save tonight.
He's not as good.
But let's not go overboard.
Nowhere near as good as Henrik Larsson. But since he left, I mean, who's been the top? Robbie Keane, Craig Bellamy.
Celtic had a string of very good goalkeepers as well.
Aye, that's true.
But, you know, Kasper Schmeichel is up there with any of the guys that have played in goal, whether it was Fraser Forster at his peak, whether it was Craig Gordon, you know, David Marshall before that, Arthur Boris, Joe Hart, and let's forget about the Greek fella that was there for a bit. Yeah, look, Schmeichel is, do you know what he is? He's calm, he's got authority, he's a leader, and you can trust him in key moments. He's the guy that will produce when the chips are down and when you're needing your goalkeeper to make a save, you can rely on him to do that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, good night for him. Another clean sheet in the Champions League.
Yeah,
and you know, maybe that's a point. I don't know. I haven't looked at the stats, but I wonder, you know, how many Celtic goalkeepers have got 2 back-to-back clean sheets away from home in the Champions League.
No,
probably not that many.
I don't think there'll be any. There can't
probably
be.
Not.
No. And on the defence thing, Keith, I think this is a little bit harsh, but I do think it's true. I do think Austin Trusty has made a difference coming in next to Carter Vickers. I do think he's a little bit of a better defender than Scales.
Yeah, you're killing me a little bit there because I've been so complimentary towards Liam Scales since the start of the season. I think he's come on leaps and bounds. I think Brendan Rodgers have made him a better player.
I do agree.
I actually do feel a bit sorry for him that he's lost his place, his regular starting place in Brendan Rodgers' kind of first pick defence. But you can't argue because Trusty's he's got a different level in him again. Immaculate, and Liam Scales is really good in there, but I think Trusty's probably got a couple inches on him height wise.
A bit faster.
He's maybe a bit faster. He might be a wee bit better with the ball at his feet as well. Look, it's we're talking about the evolution of Celtic squad under Brendan Rodgers, and particularly over the last 6 months or so. And it's exactly to get himself into this position where, do you know what? If Trusty wasn't able to play for whatever reason, Scales goes in, you don't think that Celtic would be significantly weakened if they had to do that.
No.
If Liam Scales plays at the weekend, for example, in the cup final against Rangers, you don't think it would be a significant problem. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that remains a constant is that Cameron Carter-Vickers remains the top man defensively, and I thought he was impressive and solid in everything he did again tonight. I know that he had that kind of brain melt moment against Bruges in the last time out, but these things happen. Again, another guy that's just completely reliable, and this is the bit what I say when I say it's a little bit refreshing. I mean it, because how many times over the years has it been the same movie with Celtic when they go away from home in Europe, whether it's the Europa League, whether it's the Champions League, you just think they're swinging open like a barn door at the back. And that's not all down to the men in his defence. That's also down to what he's done after Dortmund, when he's just changed the balance of the midfield and he's tempered it a little bit, and he's asking guys to sit closer to each other and sit tighter to Callum McGregor. And I tell you something, what I noticed tonight, and again, it was the exact same in Bergamo, the amount of times Greg Taylor went in to midfield just to sit beside Callum McGregor and give them an extra body in there. And it's really clever stuff. I mean, some people might think it's quite simple. I'm not sure. I was speaking to Scott Brown about it when Scott was on the show recently, and he said that they used to do that under Brendan Rodgers in Europe as well. I think it becomes a lot more noticeable. Maybe it's because we saw the way Celtic evolved under Ange Postecoglou. So I'm freezing, I can hardly speak. And the way that Greg Taylor perfected that role. And in Europe, I think that's been a key. The way that he comes in and he sits there, and it's almost as if Celtic go to a back three, centre halves kind of split a little bit. Greg Taylor goes into a midfield position, and it just gives him another bank of two guys in there And then you've got, Bernardo and Hatate playing a little bit further forward, but not the 15, 20 yards further forward that they were in Dortmund when Celtic were so horribly exposed.
Yeah.
So this is a sign of learning on the job. And by the way, it's a sign, and it's interesting that we have this debate on this particular week when Postecoglou's coming back up the road with his Spurs side, and he's battered and he's bruised, and people are questioning him and saying that he's not pragmatic enough. And we all know that Ange Postecoglou won't change. And Brendan Rodgers said after Dortmund he wasn't going to change, but he has changed. Yeah. And it's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater changes. It's just little sensible adjustments. And it's made Celtic so much tighter, so much more, as I said, use the word robust. And that's what you need to be at this level, especially away from home in Europe. Yeah. It's working. It's working. Yeah. The points are now 9 points in the bag. Young boys are bound to come to Celtic Park. Young boys, I think, are currently sitting in position 36 out of 36. The worst team in the group. The worst team in the whole group phase. I would be astonished if it's anything but a Celtic win on that night. And then there you are, you're home and hosed. And by the way, you might be in with the slimmest of shouts of a direct place into the knockouts and avoiding the playoffs. I doubt it though, because the way it's all starting to take shape now, there's some big teams that are below Celtic in the table still, and they'll get points. Yeah. So, but you know what? It really is mission accomplished. Brendan Rodgers set this target at the start of the season. He's accomplished it, and he's probably accomplished it with 2 games to spare. Can't ask for more than that.
I've done my stats research tonight, Keith. I've got receipts. So Opta have ran over 100,000.
You know how I love stats.
They've ran over 100,000 permutations, simulations of every possible, conceivable way every result could go in the Champions League group stage.
Okay.
And off the back of that, 99% of the time, if you finish in 10 points, you go through. So there you go.
Yeah.
So Celtic right on the brink is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, like they are. I mean, you don't need a supercomputer to tell you that. That's I'll leave me out of the kind of stats and the boffins and you just look at it and you think, do you know what? I think they've probably got enough already. 9's probably enough. But if 9 becomes 12 after the game against Young Boys, then there's no debate about it. It's just then, are you in with an outside chance if you went to Villa at the end of January and managed to get a win at Villa? As, by the way, Villa...
It's not ridiculous, eh?
Well, do you know what? Villa are a right strong side. And they're really good in Europe because they've got a really good experienced European manager. However, they've been far from invincible over the last few weeks. Who knows what shape Villa are going to be in by that point, and who knows what they're going to need to take from that game. Mm-hmm. So you could go into it with this outside chance, but as I keep coming back to it, the target was set and the target has now been achieved. I'm convinced of that.
Yeah. Let me throw a couple of more fan comments at you. This one I think is quite interesting from Janet. It says, did Rodgers get his team selection right tonight? I think Ida would have caused more problems for Zagreb.
That's interesting.
Than Kyogo managed. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I agree. And I did say last night I thought that he might go back to the Bergamo blueprint, which was Ida up front. And I think that if he had that team selection again, I think he might have changed it. It wasn't that Kyogo, because Kyogo does what he does and he darts around, but he didn't really affect the game. And because Zagreb were tactically trying to squeeze Celtic in the middle of the pitch, Callum McGregor didn't get space to dictate the play. That's good. That's good tactical stuff from the Croats. But it meant I could count maybe about 5 or 6 occasions where Cameron Carter-Vickers has had to step into that position and try and build play from where Callum McGregor would usually do it. Mm-hmm. And when he was doing that, there wasn't a lot of options for him in midfield. He must have fizzed about 5 or 6 balls into Kyogo. And I think in 3 or 4 of these occasions, Kyogo either slipped, tried to turn, lost possession. very rarely did he do what you would expect him to do, which is like collect it, turn, bring somebody else into play. That's what Adam Ida's all about. And that's what I said last night when we were talking about using him as a potential sort of landing strip for Celtic to get out from the back. I think Ida's physicality would have made him better able to do that against, a big burly Croatian defence. I thought Kyogo expended a lot of energy tonight, but didn't add that much to Celtic's performance. Ida's physicality might have helped.
Ian, watching live on YouTube as well, raises the point. He says, Hatate was poor. We need 2 more fullbacks at this level. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because Alistair Johnston obviously went off injured tonight. And, Anthony Ralston's a really good player. But if he was to be injured, Johnston, it's a bit of a downgrade. Became a really important player for Celtic.
That's one, and I don't like saying this because Anthony Ralston is just one of these guys you can absolutely hang your hat on. You know what you'll get from him. He'll go out there, he'll give absolutely everything, as he did tonight when he came on in the second half or for the second half. But yes, if you're being realistic about it, is he the sort of, we're talking about how Brendan Rodgers can make these changes without a drop-off in quality. There is a bit of a drop-off in quality at right back if Anthony Ralston's taking over from Alistair Johnston. There's a bit of a gap between the pair of them. And I think that was quite noticeable. But again, do you know something? I give credit to Dinamo Zagreb. They had Celtic worked out tactically. Their fullbacks really had big performances against Celtic's wide men. And that meant that there wasn't that much room up the side of the pitch for Celtic. Kuhn struggled against the French defender, what was his name? Gabriel. And Maida didn't get much change out of his guy, Rakowski, I think it was.
Yep.
And those fullbacks played to a plan there. They basically just went man for man. They didn't often get that far up the pitch. Occasionally they did. But first and foremost, their job was to prevent Celtic from getting easy kind of attacks down the flanks, and these easy attacks come if you're pushing on too far and you leave space for somebody just to play the balls over the top, because the speed of the guys that Celtic have got in the flanks makes them really dangerous. And I thought, to be fair to Dinamo Zagreb, I thought they did a good job in cancelling Celtic's main threat out from the wide areas. Another reason, by the way, why if you did have Ida in there, he might have been able to mix it up a little bit in terms of his physicality, holding the ball in and maybe linking with the wide players a little bit better than Kyogo was able to do it tonight. But as I said, look, this isn't time for a post-mortem. Celtic have got a point, and all points are prisoners in the Champions League, especially away from home, and it's a job well done. Not brilliantly done, not a scintillating Celtic performance, but as I said at the start, it was streetwise, it was savvy, and it was perfectly sufficient.
Yeah. As if to just underline the difference in thought among some of the Celtic fans, Mark Fairfield says, Ida doesn't offer anything. We need a first-choice striker to battle Kyogo. And then Howard comes right back in. Ida was better than Kyogo. So there you go. I want to throw this one at you, though, Keith, because, just to create how I like to create a bit of controversy. Frankie has written in watching live on YouTube.
With your off-screen behaviour.
Well, let's not start that again. My mum's concerned. Mum, if you're watching, turn it off. Keith, are you aware that they had half a team out in an atmosphere like Ross County? You don't think we should be winning that game? And I think what Frankie's alluding to is the fact that on the bench,
it's an opportunity missed.
They had 5 teenagers and 2 goalies on the bench.
Yeah,
is it an opportunity missed?
I can see why some people will say that, but I come back to it, these Celtic fans, many of them have followed this team over the last couple of decades, all over Europe, to away grounds everywhere, some more hostile than others. And they've suffered a little bit. They've suffered a lot, actually. So see, when you're now got a Celtic side that if you're not going to win the match, don't lose it. It's that old saying. And that would be my kind of yardstick for Celtic away in Europe. If you can come back undefeated, going away to whatever it is, whatever far-flung destination you've been sent to, if you come back And unless we're talking about real minnows, but this is the Champions League we're talking about.
Yeah.
There are no minnows. Young boys, perhaps, will be and Slovan Bratislava would be two that you would look at and say, well, they're games that you should win, right? Home or away. But the good news is for Celtic, they've got young boys at Celtic Park. They've beaten Slovan Bratislava at Celtic Park. They've now went 2 away games in the Champions League, the top level of European football, and they've come back with 2 clean sheets and 2 points.
Yeah.
Now, we can be hypercritical, but, we've been critical of Celtic previously for failing to do the obvious things and the pragmatic things. So now that they're doing them and they're getting points, I don't know. I think that'd be I think it's overly harsh.
Yeah.
I just think you've got to realise the context of the competition that you're playing in, the quality of the teams that you're coming up against. I accept 100% that Dinamo Zagreb were undermanned a little bit there, and that wasn't their top team. But take your breaks. Celtic were comfortable. It's not as if we're talking about Schmeichel making one save that he should make. He's not been flying about all over his 6-yard box, making miraculous blocks and last gasp tackles flying in. That was a Celtic controlled away performance in Europe. Mm-hmm. And after years of watching Celtic be anything but controlled and composed away from home in Europe, I think this is a sign of progress. I think it's a sign, as I said, after Bergamo, that they are coming of age, or they have come of age now at this level as a Champions League side. And surely that's what Celtic fans have been crying out for over the years.
Yeah.
We're not going to start getting all Ange Postecoglou and Spurs here, are we? And start saying that's not attractive enough. That's not the Celtic way. Are we? Is that the argument we're going to have?
No, I don't think so. No.
Well, it seems like Kaiser thinks that.
Let me throw a couple of more fan comments at you. This one from Sean. I suppose you're correct, Keith. Sean, away for a lie down. Stephen Emery, watching live on YouTube. Celtic have been a joke in Europe for 10 years. This campaign has been brilliant. Wish people would understand we're small fry at the top table in Europe. 9 points so far is excellent. And just to go back to what you were saying, Keith, I think whether or not the small fries, if that's the right phrase, Celtic haven't won away from home in the Champions League for 7 years.
Yeah,
so,
and elect.
Aye, so I think you're spot on when you say every point away from home is a bonus.
Do you know what? And it's all about the growth and progression of this side. See, when you go to Dortmund and you get your pants pulled down in spectacular fashion, that can be so damaging to confidence. All of a sudden, you've got players who think they're good players, and they go into their shell a little bit because they've just had an absolute hiding. They're nowhere near as good as they thought they were. Mm-hmm. That was a really dangerous moment for Brendan Rodgers, because had he gone to face Atalanta and Bergamo and something similar had happened, then it really can not only impact on what you're trying to build on a European platform, but what you're doing domestically as well. Mm-hmm. Because players hurt and they question themselves and they start to doubt themselves. Mm-hmm. So for Rodgers to get a grip of that side and to make the tactical tweaks that made them so much more difficult to play through in Italy, and again tonight, well, that's progression. And see, once you get your confidence levels up and you're used to going away from home and getting points, well, all of a sudden you find that these points might turn into 3 points, because the expectation level within the heads of the players is altered. Mm-hmm. And what you don't want, and what has been the case with Celtic, was, oh no, here we go again, another away trip. We know what's coming next. Mm-hmm. And it almost became like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
So this is a change. And do you know what? If it means being slightly less entertaining, well, who cares? You weren't there to entertain the Dinamo Zagreb fans. You were there to try and get a point for your own fans. You gave them that. They can go up the road happy. I fail to see why there should be any wailing or gnashing of teeth on this one. This is a sign of Celtic's progression on the European stage. That's what Brendan Rodgers promised on day one. Yep. He promised that he was there to make Celtic more competitive at the top level in Europe, and he's delivering. And fair play to him, because he's had to have a rethink himself after what happened in Dortmund. And he's been pragmatic. I hate to use that word again, and Ange Postecoglou week, but he's been pragmatic enough to do it. And I think that shows a sign that even at his age now, Brendan Rodgers, what is he, 51, 52, he's maturing as a coach. Yeah. Because he wouldn't have done that 7 years ago. He wouldn't have been prepared to do it. Like I wrote a piece today on Postecoglou. People are saying, Jamie Carragher and all this, if he doesn't change, he'll lose his job. Anybody that knows Ange Postecoglou will tell him that Ange Postecoglou would rather lose his job than sacrifice his principles. That's just the way he is. And Brendan Rodgers was a bit like that. And I think Celtic fans should be pleased that Brendan Rodgers isn't just that stubborn, because at this level, against teams of this quality, you're going to have to accept that you might have to just change a little bit without, as I said, throwing everything out. You still want to have an attacking edge to what you're trying to achieve out there, but you need to be mindful defensively, because if you don't, you'll get cut open.
Yeah.
And this doesn't look now like a Celtic side that's going to get cut open the way it did in Dortmund. That's progression.
Well, you mentioned Dortmund, Keith. Mark Fairfield, I think, raises a good point. He says, if anyone said after the Dortmund gubbing we would be undefeated in the next 5 games, you'd be looking for the van with the guy in a straitjacket. And it's 14 games in all competitions that Celtic have unbeaten since Dortmund. And I think they deserve a lot of credit for that. The wheels could have easily come off after such a...
After you get a tanking like that. Absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. That's good management. Because there was no panic button pressed, and there could have been, and it could have slid into the domestic campaign. It could have really changed the mood music around Brendan Rodgers in his second season, and I think he realised the importance then of not exposing Celtic to another really sore night in Italy, and the changes that he's made, the concessions that he's made. They are concessions because, rather than having Callum McGregor exposed there as the only guy in the base of defence, with the full-backs going forward, with the other two central midfielders getting forward and leaving him and two centre-halves. And that's what the problem was in Dortmund. That time after time, it was Callum McGregor and two centre-halves, and that was it. And there was about 5 Dortmund players running over the top of them. So he's made various changes. I think, as I said previously, Greg Taylor slipping in and almost becoming, and I don't like using phrases like this either, a double pivot with Callum McGregor at the base of the midfield. It just gives them more numbers. And the fact is that, Paulo Bernardo was disciplined tonight. Didn't really affect the game the way that he would want to on the ball, but he was disciplined. Hatate was disciplined. They kept a shape in next to nice and tight. They didn't leave the gaps. And it's almost as if they went over this Dortmund thing and looked at it and it's a horror movie that they've been replaying and saying, look, we just can't do that. At this level, that's suicide. So they've changed. Yeah. It's smart.
Yeah, I think to round off on the Champions League talk, Christopher McMullen sums up nicely. Win the next game, 12 points. Every fan would be delighted with that 3 months ago.
Correct.
Even a draw. And I think he's spot on with that. I mean, if you'd given this to any Celtic fan, this scenario, you'd bite the hand off it. Absolutely.
Well, either before a ball had been kicked in the campaign or after Dortmund.
Exactly.
If you, at any point, at these two, I mean, I know that people start getting excited, and right, understandably so, after the Slovan Bratislava. But as we're saying, if we are looking for soft touches in this group phase, Slovan Bratislava right up there, or right down there, and so are young boys. Yeah. So, and do you know what? Take your luck when you can get it as well. It's good. It's great news for Celtic that these two teams are part of the home fixture list, because it gives them a real chance. And as I said, I never mind gives them a real chance. As far as I'm concerned, Celtic are possibly there without anything. But I fully expect 3 points at home to young boys, and then who knows what the Villa game might throw up.
Just before we finish, Keith, we talked about the team from tonight, but does tonight's game, the performance, do you think it will in any way alter Rodgers' plans for the cup final on Sunday?
Well, the first question is, and I'm not there, so I can't ask the question myself, but I'm sure we'll find out. Craig Swan, I'm entirely sure will ask the question, is what's the prognosis on Alistair Johnson's injury? Yeah. Because it didn't look particularly clever. But then he's quite a sturdy wee guy, Alistair Johnson, isn't he? He's had injuries and he's come back from them, more quickly than anybody might reasonably be expected. I'm sure that he'll be determined to have his starting place back at Hampden on Sunday. But, we'll need to wait and see with that one, because it did look a little bit, his leg looked to get caught underneath him, and you're always worried, have you hyperextended anything there? Has there been,
it looked awkward.
Yeah, and I'd imagine that's one that he's going to have to come back. I think Celtic are flying back tonight, come back, maybe get a scan on it tomorrow if it's still feeling stiff, and work out the extent of the damage. Hopefully not. Hopefully it's one of these that he can just kind of, play through, and the substitution was largely precautionary. But I don't know. I don't know if Brendan Rodgers would have made that change with Hampden in mind, given what was at stake tonight. That does suggest to me that Alistair Johnston was clearly struggling.
Yeah.
So that's the first question that needs to be asked and answered. I guess we won't get a satisfactory answer tonight, unless, of course, they are relaxed about it and Brendan Rodgers says, no, it'll be fine for the weekend. In terms of then the midfield, again, for me, Cal McGregor and Hatate will be the first names in the team sheet in the centre of the park, and then it's a question for who takes the third place. It was Paulo Bernardo tonight. Arnie Engels come on, Luke McCowan come on. So I think it's 1 from 3 there. The wide men will stay the same. Kyogo, I think, is a certain starter.
Yeah,
because he just causes Rangers nightmares.
He absolutely torments them.
Yeah. If Alistair Johnston's fit, it'll be him and Greg Taylor. And I think it'll be trusty Carter Vickers and Schmeichel. So I don't see too many changes. 1, 2, depending on
Aye.
how the docs assess Alistair Johnston's injury.
Yeah, absolutely. Keith, I think that brings us to the end of Tuesday's Hotline Live.
Short and sweet tonight, Daniel.
Absolutely, brought to you by Record Sport. The comments that have kind of been brilliant. We've had plenty of them. Thank you very much for contributing. We'll be back to do it all again tomorrow at 6 p.m. Keith, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
And thanks for watching at home. Cheers.